Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the GSL-English Podcast. My name is Gideon, and this is a podcast designed to immerse you in the English language in a relaxed and natural way. So if you do want to practice your English listening skills, if you want to learn some new vocabulary and understand British culture a little bit more, then this podcast is most certainly for you, because in this episode we're going to talk about a wide variety of different things. So recently we've been having some more study focused episodes and lessons, but this one's a bit more relaxed. We are going to talk about jet lag. Okay, what is it and how annoying can it be? We're going to talk about Cornish Pasties, one of my favourite snacks of all time. And we're also going to look at how science says we can learn and remember new vocabulary. Because that's a question that I get asked all the time by my private students, but also by many of you lovely watchers and listeners. You know, how can I learn vocabulary but remember it and actually start using it? So I've kind of done some research on not just my opinions on how you can do that, but how science says you can do that. So it's backed up by evidence. It's not just my opinion for once. So yeah, hold on for that. But if you are new here, you know, you are most welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video or this episode on whatever platform it is. Please don't forget to subscribe. If you are a returning viewer or listener, thank you as always for your support. I truly do appreciate it. And if you are a member of the GSL English channel on YouTube, then my hat goes off to you. Thank you so much for your loyal support. So I hope you are all doing well. I hope you've had a good week. This podcast is going to go out on Sunday, so it's coming towards the end of the weekend. That's a negative way of looking at it, isn't it? Sunday morning, that's halfway through the weekend. It's not coming to the end. So I hope you are having a good weekend so far, and I hope you've had a good week, whatever you are doing and wherever you are in the world. I know I do ask this a lot, but please do let me know where you are listening or watching from. I always love to read those comments. It just always amazes me how kind of far and wide this podcast seems to be reaching at the moment, which is fantastic. Yeah, so please do let me know in the comments. This feels like a really long introduction. How long's it been? 3 minutes. A 3-minute introduction. I felt like I was rambling a little bit there. I'm still getting back into the swing of things after my holiday. To get back into the swing of things, you know, it means to get back into normality, to get back into your routine. And I'm still getting into the swing of things. I'm still getting used to podcasting again, talking to myself on a camera, you know, so bear with me. But that does feel like a massively long introduction. So the natural idea would be to stop the introduction, but for some reason I can't seem to stop. So, okay, let's just move on. Jet lag. That's what we're going to talk about first. Jet lag. What is it? Well, basically, it's your body adjusting to different time zones. I've never really fell victim to jet lag before. I've been fortunate enough to travel all around the world, but I often find that after a good night's sleep, I'm over it. You know, jet lag doesn't seem to bother me. But oh my goodness, I have found it so tough getting back from Orlando, which, if I am correct, is 5 hours behind. So 5 hours behind. Going there was absolutely no problem. Coming back has been hideous. This week has been tough. I don't know if you've ever suffered jet lag or had to put up with it, but it's been really difficult. As I say, going there, we didn't really have that much of a problem. Maybe it's just because of the excitement of the holiday, you kind of mentally just get over it. But coming back has been difficult because, of course, we're 5 hours behind. So going to sleep has been really difficult. So let's imagine you go to bed at 10 o'clock. It's actually like going to bed at 5 o'clock in the evening. So you try and stay up. You try to go to bed early, but you can't. So you end up staying up late. And then, let's say you go to bed at 2 o'clock, you've got to then wake up at 6 o'clock the next morning. But of course, you're 5 hours behind, so that is 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. And it's been awful. And it's taken a really long time to get over it, especially considering that it's starting to get a bit colder here in England, in the southeast. It's just starting to get a bit nippy. You know, August is gone. September's gone. What am I talking about? August went months ago. Oh man, I'm living in the past. You've got to move on, Gideon. October is here, and it's just starting to get a little bit nippy. It's starting to get a bit colder, and that just makes it so much more difficult in the morning. So I've been suffering with jet lag this week, but I was fortunate to visit London on Wednesday. It was my parents' wedding anniversary. So they've been married for 41 years. So we met them in London, in a place called Covent Garden. I don't know if you've ever been to London, but Covent Garden is a really lovely place to visit. And if you are walking there, particularly from Victoria Station in London, so there's a lot of trains that end up in Victoria, there's a beautiful walk you can do to Covent Garden where you see Buckingham Palace, Big Ben, the London Eye, you know, and you walk through St James's Park. It's a really beautiful walk. And although it was cold, we had a bit of sun out. So we did that walk on Wednesday. Absolutely lovely. I do highly recommend Covent Garden. If you kind of want just a nice bit of hubbub, you want a bit of atmosphere and you just want to relax and unwind, there's plenty of bars, coffee shops, restaurants, and within that locality you can get to many other areas. So if you are going to London, highly recommend Covent Garden. It is really lovely, particularly if you start to go this time of year, because it's got that autumnal feel. You know, it's just a little bit crisp, all the lights start coming on, and there's a really lovely atmosphere in London. This is actually now, like, coming into winter, is one of my favourite times to visit London, because although it gets darker a lot earlier, all the lights are on and there's just a really lovely feel, like a magical kind of feel. It's really, really nice. So I do highly recommend, if you're possibly able, you know, visit London at this time of year or coming into winter. It is quite nice. But of course, pack your umbrella. But one thing that massively surprised me in London. Okay, so in Victoria Station, there's a place that I always used to get a Cornish pasty. So every time at Victoria Station, I would come home, even from when I was younger, I would always get a Cornish pasty from this stand. Now, if you're wondering what a Cornish pasty is, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into what a Cornish pasty is. And then I'm going to talk to you about my issue with Cornish pasties in London. I couldn't believe it. Okay? Maybe I'm just out of the loop a bit, but I couldn't believe it. But firstly, let's dive into what a Cornish pasty is. So as a disclaimer, Cornish pasty is one of my favourite English snacks. I absolutely love it. If you know, you know. If you've had one, you know. They're just amazing. So a Cornish pasty is a traditional baked pastry from Cornwall. Okay, so the name Cornish, of course, comes from Cornwall, southwest of England. Beautiful place. Cornwall is probably my favourite area in England. I absolutely love it. You can go surfing there. You can chill. The atmosphere and the vibe is just really relaxed. There's cool places to visit. My nan actually lives in Cornwall. Absolutely love it. So that's where the Cornish pasty comes from. And it's kind of characterised or famous because it's in a distinctive D shape. Okay, so the shape of it is like the letter D, capitalised, and it has a crimped edge. Okay, so it's got like pastry and then a crimped edge around the sides. And it is filled with a full mix of meat and vegetables. So it's pastry with basically a meat and veg filling with a thick pastry around the edge. The classic Cornish pasty filling has beef, potatoes, onions, and swede. Okay, yeah, so beef, potatoes, onions and swede, but it's all chopped up fine. It's not big chunks of beef, just chopped up very fine. And that filling is kind of encased in a short crust, like puff pastry. And as I say, the edge is crimped along one side, got that thick pastry, so it's easier to hold and eat. They're just absolutely beautiful, particularly on a cold winter's day. I absolutely love a Cornish pasty when the pastry is just a little bit brown, a little bit crispy, but inside it's just full of this meaty and vegetable goodness. And it actually has medieval origin. So preparing for this, I thought, what is the origin of a Cornish pasty? And actually the pasty has roots, that go back to medieval times, where similar pie-like dishes were always eaten across England. But it became closely associated with Cornwall in the 18th and 19th centuries. And these Cornish pasties, come from the term pastry, they were an everyday meal for tin miners, farmers and labourers, all those that worked in those kind of fields. So it wasn't so much a snack, it was a meal. And the idea of the thick cut pastry or crust around the edge of the pasty allowed them to hold that bit with dirty hands and eat what was inside it. So let's imagine you have this kind of thick D shape of thinner pastry, but all around the edge you have a thick crust that almost acts as a handle. And the idea was, because they're working outside, they're working hard, they've got dirty hands, they would hold that thick bit of pastry around the edge, and then they could eat the fillings without eating whatever muck was on their hands. And then that part would tend to be thrown to the animals, or just left on the ground. Nowadays, we eat the whole thing. So we eat the handle or the thick crust around the edge. But that is the origin of the Cornish pasty. The best Cornish pasty I ever had was in a town called St Ives in Cornwall. And it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. The pastry was thick but not too thick. It's not doughy in any way. Just that first bite was just perfect. The insides, the seasoning on everything was just lovely. So if you come to England and don't have a Cornish pasty, it's a crime. Okay? In my eyes, it's a crime. If you come to England, you don't have a Cornish pasty, I will come and find you. Okay? I don't accept it. I don't accept no as an answer. They are incredible. If you've had a Cornish pasty, let me know in the comments. Did you like it? There's only one answer to that, which is yes. I won't accept no as an answer. I'm very passionate about Cornish pasties. There's not much I feel passionate about, but Cornish pasties is one of them. But this leads us back to London. Why did I have an issue? Well, I remember, leading into another story, where I used to live, or even where I live now, you can pick up a Cornish pasty for, I think, £3.50, £4. It's gone up a bit in price. I remember when they used to be like £2.50, but £3.50, £4, good one, £5, in a bit of a fancy area. In London, at the train station, £8 each for a Cornish pasty. I don't know whether I'm just being harsh, whether I am being oblivious to the times that we're living in, the financial difficulties, but £8 a Cornish pasty is ridiculous, I think. I went to get 4 for my family. So that's 8, 16, 24, £32 for Cornish pasties. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is the price that they should be right now. But I can tell you, they're not the best Cornish pasties in London because they're kind of been sitting there all day. They're not that fresh. This was towards the end of the day. So I did have an issue with that. And I stormed out of there quite unhappy because I've been looking forward to a Cornish pasty all day. Maybe I'll just stop being tight and just pay that amount for a Cornish pasty. But I've got principles, and I won't do it. So I went and got one at my local bakery here, and I think, £4.50, £3, something like that. Perfect. And it was really, really good. So, highly recommend a good Cornish pasty. Funnily enough, we do have a famous bakery kind of chain called Greggs. I don't think they're allowed to sell Cornish pasties. I don't know. I just remember a rumour in the back of my mind now that they don't sell Cornish pasties. So don't go to Greg's if you want a Cornish pasty. Okay, so with no seamless link, so there's no kind of natural transition, we're now going to talk about vocabulary. I get messages all the time asking me, Gideon, I'm trying to learn vocabulary. I sit down and learn it, but I don't remember it. I don't ever remember the words that I've learned, and then I can't actually use them. So the exercise seems futile, pointless. It's a waste of time. And this is extremely frustrating. I completely understand this. With any language you're trying to learn, you put in the effort to learn vocabulary. You want to be able to use it. So what are we doing wrong? If that's the case, what are we doing wrong? Well, you're not necessarily doing anything wrong. It's just, it's the mental connection and the bits in between that makes a difference. So we're going to go through some of them. And as I said before, I've tried to back each of these points up with evidence, with scientific answers as to why they will help. Not that you need that. You don't need science to tell you this, but I just thought sometimes it gives it a bit more grounds for being listened to. Do you know what I mean? It gives it a bit more backing and a bit more confidence, so we're willing to try it. So the first point I wanted to share with you, if you want to learn and remember vocabulary, is contextual learning. I've spoken about this in some previous episodes, and it is something that I really highly recommend. I do it with all of my students, and that is to learn words in context, not in isolation all the time. And I say all the time because sometimes we do just want to sit down and go through some vocabulary. We learn some words in isolation. But you are much more likely to learn words in context. When you see words in context, they become more meaningful. You make a connection with that word in your brain and your life and your own experiences. And according to a study by Schmidt and Schmidt, this was in 1995, it said that vocabulary is better learned through meaningful context rather than by rote memorization. Learning in context allows learners to see how words interact with other words and grammar, improving retention and recall. And I think that point of words interacting with other aspects of the English language is essential. It's like I'm into cars and I find engines quite interesting. Just looking at a component out of an engine, it's quite difficult to learn what that component will do. For example, if you take a spark plug out of an engine, if you had no idea what that was and just put it on the table, it will be difficult to know what it is. You might remember that it's a spark plug, but you don't know how to use it. But if you then look at that piece in action, you look at it in context with the engine, what it's doing with all of the other parts of the engine, you remember it, and it makes perfect sense. That applies with vocabulary. We need it to interact with everything else in the English language, with grammar, with other words. And that will help us to understand it more, and we are much more likely to remember it. As an example, let's imagine that you did something at the weekend that you really enjoyed. Or perhaps next weekend you're really looking forward to something. And you want a word to talk about your emotions. So you learn the word excited. Okay, let's take that simple one. You'd learn that simple word excited. So rather than just writing excited down, writing down the meaning, give it context. Let it interact with other words. Let it interact with a sentence. So in that sentence, write down something like, I'm really excited about going to the concert this weekend. So now that word is interacting with the English language, but it's also interacting with your life. So write down what you're excited about. Write down something that you find exciting. And by doing this, it helps you to see how words fit into your everyday life, but would also fit how they fit into conversation. And it just becomes so much easier. You're learning a word in context. And this is why it's brilliant to learn vocabulary from reading. I know this kind of seems a bit of an age-old idea, but reading and learning vocabulary automatically gives it context. But also then you associate that book with a story, with an author, with characters, with emotion, with feeling. And by doing that, you're kind of just giving that word so much interaction with the rest of the English language and also yourself. Okay? That's the first point. Learn through context. Even if you just stumble across a single word, and you look it up, you look at the meaning. As an extra step, give it context. Write a sentence. Talk about that word. Apply it to your life. That is what will help you to remember it. Let it interact. Let it play around with the rest of the English language. Okay. Now, the next point we're going to look at is just going down on my notes here. To practice active recall. Now, this is an interesting one. Active recall is, you're testing yourself regularly rather than just passively reviewing information. Okay, so you're challenging your brain to actively recall or retrieve information. So I do this with a lot of my students, but also it's something that you can do at home to challenge yourself through active recall. And as an example, you could do this. So let's say you learned the word impressive. So instead of just thinking, right, I'm going to reread the definition, just going to reread the definition, then close the book. Close your eyes. Try to recall the word and its meaning without looking. But going back to the previous step, also try to recall the context, the feeling, the emotion, the interaction with your life. Test yourself. And you can do this with flashcards. You can do this with simply having words written down with the definition covered. Or you can do it in reverse. Have the definition and then try and guess what the word is, whatever it is. But by doing this, you are actively challenging your brain rather than just rereading, because rereading is actually not challenging at all, is it? But if we challenge our brain, if we push it, then it's much more likely to remember that word. A study by Rowe, Digger and Butler in 2011 showed that actively recalling information, also known as the testing effect, leads to better long-term retention. Testing yourself forces your brain to work harder, which reinforces learning. Rereading, going over, is not enough. I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but let's be honest, it's just not enough. You need to challenge yourself. You need to test yourself if you want to learn, remember, and use new vocabulary. It's like going to the gym. I know I've used this analogy a few times, but if you want to build muscle, if you want to get fitter, if you want to perform to your best ability, you have to challenge your body. You have to challenge it, shock it. And by that way, it slowly and gradually gets better in its state of performance. It's the same with vocabulary. Test yourself. So perhaps the process could be that we learn 5 new words. We learn their meaning. We give them context. The next day, we test ourselves on those 5 words. So we look at the word. We think about its definition. Then we use a sentence with that word. We challenge our brains. And then by doing that, we're giving our brain kind of something to work on. We're really trying to test it. And just as a practical tip, set up small quizzes for yourself. Or with friends and family if you can. Do this with flashcards, simply writing down a list of words and covering the definitions. But try to do this every day or every other day if you can. This is so much more effective, an effective use of your time than just rereading. And that leads us into our next point, or next way that we can, learn, remember and use new vocabulary. And that is to engage regularly with it. Basically, we're saying you use it or you lose it. Okay? Engage with that vocabulary. Don't just look at it, read it, forget it, because it's going to go nowhere. We've got to use it, but out loud, using these words in conversation. We need to speak these words. If you do it in writing as well, fantastic. Even thinking in English, use those new words, engage with them, connect with them, lock them in. For example, if you've learned, let's take the word grateful. Okay, so we learn the word grateful, which means that we're grateful for something. Well, we try and use it in a conversation over the next week. Someone helps you out. I'm really grateful for your help today. Or perhaps we just walk out, we're on our own, it's a sunny day. We could say to ourselves, I'm really grateful for the sunny weather. Try to think to yourself in English, or write sentences at the end of your day using that new words, but connect with them, engage with them. The production effect, studied by MacLeod et al. In 2010, shows that saying or writing words out loud improves recall. Speaking forces you to produce the word, which activates additional parts of your brain, making it easier to remember. Say those words out loud. Engage with them. Even, some people say, well, I don't have anyone to talk to. I haven't got somebody else in English that I can have a conversation with. If you're at home and you do have a list of words, you're doing your challenge, your quiz, you're testing yourself, do it out loud. I know that might seem a little bit weird at first, but it is such a brilliant way, because even speaking those words out loud on your own, you're creating a connection with your brain, a stronger connection than just reading them in your mind. Okay? Engage with those words out loud. And if you can start using words in conversation, absolutely brilliant. But just engage with them. Use them. Make it a goal to use new vocabulary every day, every week. Okay, and the final area that I just wanted to share with you is grouping. Okay, this is a brilliant way of using new vocabulary, and that is to group related words together, or semantic grouping. So you can improve retention by grouping related words together. This helps your brain make connections between words, which can aid memory. And this helps you later on as you get into collocations, to phrasal verbs. You're just kind of starting that process of grouping words together. Research by Collins and Quillen in 1969 on semantic memory networks found that our brain organizes information into categories. So it's what it does. We naturally organize information into categories, even if we don't know we are doing it. So learning words in related groups creates a web of connections that makes it easier to recall them later. So just to illustrate that, let's imagine that we're learning words related to emotions. Okay, so maybe talking about emotions or how we feel in English is something that we struggle with. So we think, okay, I'm going to learn words that are based around emotion. So we take the ones that we've looked at already today. Excited, grateful, joyful. Well, we're studying those words grouped in to the category of emotions. Grouping them by theme or topic makes it easier for your brain to recall them because they are connected. So rather than just writing random words down, well, why not one day or 1 week think, okay, this week we're focusing on vocabulary to do with emotions, or we're focusing on vocabulary to do with business, to do with food, to do with health. Make that your focus for the week or for the day, whatever works for you. And then we follow all of the steps that we've looked at. We challenge ourselves. We connect those words with our lives. We let them interact with the English language, and then we engage with them. We speak out loud those words. But we've done this now. We've created a group. And because of that, our brain is much more likely to remember the vocabulary within that group we have focused on that week. it's a brilliant, I often do it with many of my students that will just have kind of a topic for that lesson and the vocabulary will base around that. But there you go. There's just some ideas. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. But on the other hand, make your time count. There's nothing worse than that frustration of spending hours studying vocabulary and then having nothing to show for it. So put these steps into practice. Give it a go. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. If there's anything I can help you with, please do let me know. But also, I would love it if you could share your thoughts. What's helped you? There's no wrong answers. If it's helped you, it's the right answer. So if there's anything that's particularly helped you to learn vocabulary and remember it, let us know in the comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back on Wednesday with another, I think it's going to be a study lesson. So make sure you check out for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe all of the videos. It really helps me out. And I just want to keep doing this. I really do. We're growing quite nicely now. As I said, slowly and steady. But the more you guys like and the more you interact with it, the more the algorithm pushes it out. And it means that I can keep doing this and let's see where it will lead. But either way, I hope I can help you reach your English goals. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.